Welcome, everybody. My name is Tracy Stitchishin, and I'm the Vice Chair with CAMA National. We're pleased to present the third year of CAMA's Next in Agri-Food webinar series, and today we're talking about sustainability. This series is continuing as an example of living our evolved mandate of representing Canada's entire food system from farm to fork. CAMA is made up of our provincial chapters that work hard to provide the opportunity for members to connect with other agri-food marketers right across the country, to grow their skills and their passion for marketing and communications. By being a CAMA member, you can reap these benefits. Next up in the series on March 14th is our third in the webinar series with the popular Evolution of Ag, 7 Ways to Up-Level Your Agri-Marketing Today with David Lazarenko of ThinkShift. And our final webinar takes place on April 18th, with Sean Haney and Justin Funk with Real Agri Studies, as they discuss various approaches to the uses of marketing research and how it can benefit a company's go-to-market initiatives. And if you haven't already, follow us on Twitter and LinkedIn, see what's happening across the country in our industry. We'd like to thank our webinar series sponsors, CABF and Top Crop Manager. Their support not only supports our webinar series, but also CAMA as a whole in implementing and expanding our offerings to members. We'd also like to acknowledge and recognize industry partners who have joined the CAMA National Sustaining Partner Program for a second year in a row. These inaugural partners are committed to our ongoing focus of ensuring CAMA continues to be a dynamic, credible, and relevant organization for Canada's agri-food marketers and communicators. Our 4 committed partners are AdFarm, Bayer, McCann, and Real Agriculture. Thank you to these companies for their ongoing support. I'll ask Tristan at this time to turn on his camera and unmute himself. And finally, a few housekeeping items. Your questions, please type them in the Q&A box in the control panel. We'll answer the questions at the end of the presentation. The webinar will be recorded and the link will be emailed to participants within 24 hours. We will also be sending you a follow-up survey to gather your input on the webinar today and obtain feedback for suggestions for future CAMA events. I'll turn it over to CAMA Saskatchewan board member Tristan Nias with FCC to introduce today's presenter. Tristan?
Thanks, Tracy. Like she said, my name is Tristan Nias, brand business partner with FCC. I've been on the CAMA Saskatchewan board of directors for 2 years now and really enjoy the opportunities that are offered through the program. It's my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker today. Curtis Grainger is the director of lending products and sustainability programs with FCC. Curtis grew up on a mixed farming operation just southwest of Regina. He holds a bachelor's degree in business from the University of Regina with a focus on finance and economics. Curtis has worked at FCC for over a decade, where he's held various roles in credit risk, operations, internal audit, corporate strategy, and marketing. Today, he'll be sharing his insights on sustainability and how focusing on simplicity and making incremental progress on go-to-market strategies can yield better results than pursuing perfection on needlessly complex strategies. Please welcome Curtis.
Awesome. Thanks for the introduction, and happy to be here. I'm just figuring out how to share my screen. I know everybody was quite nervous about that because of my technical difficulties at time. But yeah, as mentioned, my name's Curtis Grainger. I'm the director of lending products and sustainability programs at FCC, and I'm super excited to go over a presentation here today and chat a little bit about FCC's journey in sustainability. Little context is my team with sustainability has been around for just over 2 years now. And when we were talking about what this presentation could be about, we actually thought the journey of the team would be quite interesting to articulate. And for sure, we touch a little bit on go-to-market strategies, but also just on the initiatives more broadly. And I think that's beneficial from both dynamic and communication standpoint on potential lessons people can learn when they're trying to take something out to the industry. There we go. So the agenda today and how I'm going to unpack this over the next about 30, 40 minutes before we get into a bit of a Q&A is first I really want to get into really our mindset in the background of our programs going in. We thought this was really important to understand is sometimes that mindset can really define a little bit of what you're up to. Then I want to talk about the programs generally. So kind of going over the different programs we've put out to market over the last 18 months, because they in themselves kind of show little blueprints, if you will, on how to work within agriculture and sustainability, which we thought could be beneficial to the group. And then last but not least, here is we're going to hit on some outcomes of the programs, like uptake and response, and also some lessons learned on initiative development. Okay, so our mindset going in. Um, so for those who don't know, Farm Credit Canada, agriculture and food it's really all we do. At the end of the day, we make new loans to producers, and when you have a focus on agriculture and food, some people might call that poor diversification, but I really think it just streamlines our way of thinking, and it kind of changes our perspective on time a little bit. When you're really focused on agriculture and food, and that's all you do, you're no longer thinking of just that next quarter, and you're really thinking about the next quarter century and beyond, whether that's 25 years down the road, 50, and so on. And what I love about this perspective, um, is it kind of accidentally aligns the way we think about time to that of our customers. So many people in agriculture and food are multi-generational operations, right? Like we're talking about operations that have been in the family for well over 100 years. And when you change your perspective from quarters and years to quarter century and beyond, um, of course sustainability is going to be part of that story. And I think that's really important just to get on the same page with people, because I don't think I'm breaking news here. It can be an interesting time with polarization and that kind of thing on various topics. But I think we can all agree that if we're thinking way out into the future, sustainability has a role in that. The next part of our mindset of going into when we were developing programs in market on this topic was really kind of the future proofing of agriculture and what we're trying to do here. And let me maybe unpack that a little bit in a different way. So there's always kind of the obvious mindset when you think about sustainability, like the pretty tree, or kind of those obvious approaches. But what I think we actually don't talk enough about with sustainability in agriculture is actually that risk management in that future lens. So what I mean there is my worst case for agriculture in Canada would be we're in a world that's 10, 15, 20 years down the road, and either regulations have changed or consumer preferences have changed, and we're no longer hitting the mark on what we need on delivery and market. And that's an interesting way to think about it, because at the end of the day with agriculture, what do? We sell products, goods and commodities to both local, national, and international markets. And if we're not preparing our customers for that potential future world, what that actually means is a potential loss in market access. And if we have a loss in market access, that actually means a reduction in demand for our products. And a reduction in demand for our products means reduced profitability for producers. So there's the picture perfect sustainability story that often gets talked about, but we also need to talk about the business side of it as well. And if we're truly future proofing agriculture in Canada in international markets, and we want to be that powerhouse in those international markets, we need to move forward accordingly. And it's just a really important part that I think we don't talk about enough. So that long term market advancement is critical. Getting a little bit into our mindset with what we're up to with our programs, there's a couple of key pieces as well. So I'm going to break some news here. I don't know if you guys can tell. I work behind a desk, and when we're talking about sustainability, who knows more about sustainability than the guy working behind the desk? Well, the answer is pretty simple. It's the industry knows best. So with all of our programs that we've kind of put out there is just that recognition on, hey, what's the industry trying to accomplish with sustainability? And then how can we simply support that and provide incentives to both, and on this fourth bullet here, both recognize those producers who are already doing the thing while also increasing adoption of those practices. And that was another little kind of piece of our programs that we landed on as well, is that recognizing those producers who are leading the way. Often what we saw in market with programs, and to no fault of their own, sometimes it's through funding requirements, is with sustainability, we're often chasing like the next producer to do, the next thing. And I think it's the most interesting market signal to send, where we want producers to innovate and be more sustainable and all that sort of fun stuff. But it's almost like a mixed message where, hey, we want you to move fast, but not too fast. Otherwise, you might not be eligible for the program. So we thought recognizing those industry leaders and those catalysts within the industry was critical with all of our programs. So recognizing those doing the good work while also encouraging adoption of those practices. And my favorite part about agriculture and food in Canada is really kind of what this slide is saying, and it's not really specific to sustainability, but I think it can be. Is what are our producers and leaders in industry doing on their operations every single day? Well, it's simple. This again, the slide says it. They're always innovating, they're always evolving, and they're always finding a better way. And that's so true with sustainability. I feel like in Canada, we grow some of the most safe environmentally food in the world, but we're always still trying to find a better way. And that's just really what it means to be Canadian, and it means to what it means to be involved with agriculture and food in Canada, which I truly love. So that was our mindset going into market with our programs, is kind of that long-term view, aligning with our customers, supporting industry-led initiatives, and recognizing those who are doing the work well, while also encouraging others to do the same. But that's all the theory side. And what we had to figure out is, what was the offer going to be, and where are we going to start in this market? And we kind of, in the early days when we were developing the program, is we kind of ran into a really interesting issue. And that issue was, at the end of the day, what does Farm Credit Canada do? We do lots of stuff, but really we create new loans for customers. And when we started to look around in the sustainability space, we kind of realized there's so much a producer can do or is doing where they don't actually need a new loan to do the thing, whatever that is. And I mean, that's a good news story for agriculture, but it puts someone like FCC in an interesting position, because what do? We create new loans. And that's when it kind of hit us like a ton of bricks. Is, well, if producers can do something and we want to support them in doing that, why on earth would we wait for a new loan? Why not support them in doing that today? And that's really where the concept of the program started, and how it would be operational in market. So on this number one here was really kind of the lens of, what do we need to be true in order to move this forward. So the first thing is, it does need to be the individual participating in the program. They do need to be an FCC customer with lending. Our programs do support our customers, so that part was clear. Whether it's an old loan, new loan, doesn't matter. What also needs to be true is they need to be achieving some industry-led criteria that's out there in market, right? So if those two things are true, we can kind of build a program around that. Another thing we recognized early on with sustainability is the real work happens, on the farm and in the business. We don't want a super complex application process that takes days or weeks to complete. And we want that to be relatively streamlined for the customer. So I can safely say with about 85% of our applications, the time it would take to complete for the producer or customer, I should say, is about 15 to 20 minutes as long as they kind of have their information in front of us. There's another program as well that takes a little bit longer, but we want to evolve that to simplify it as well. And then the last part is kind of the mechanism of the incentive and some thought behind that. So with our program, our customers can receive up to $2,000, but we thought it was really important that it's actually on an annual basis. And why that is with beneficial management practices out there that producers are doing. It's not a once and done situation. It really takes year over year implementation to be hitting the mark from a sustainability point of view. So that annual nature of the incentive was really important. And where the $2,000 comes from, it's actually just some simple math on kind of how lending works at FCC. So it's essentially 50 basis points or 0.5% on up to $400,000 worth of lending. So what that means is if a producer has $400,000 or more of lending with FCC, they would cap out at that $2,000 annual payment. And if they have less than $400,000, the payment is essentially prorated from there. So if they had $200,000 worth of lending, they'd receive $1,000. So we have our mindset going in. We have a bit of a kind of framework on how we're going to operationalize this program. So we're good to go. So the question becomes, what's the criteria FCC is going to create? But if you're paying any attention, we don't know as much as the industry. So it wasn't FCC that was going to create the criteria. We wanted to find a criteria out there that essentially to build a program around. And a few things we kind of wanted to look for in that from especially from like even a communication or a marketing standpoint, as well as supporting sustainability, is the program out there had to be practical, right? We wanted producers to already starting to go down that road because that boots on the ground proof of concept was really important. Another piece is there needed to be some sort of verification behind the program. Because as much as you want to ensure criteria is achieved, you actually need some verification that that information is true. That's critical with anything in sustainability wise. And then the last part we were looking for with a first program is we wanted to be very clear for a producer to know if they were in or out, essentially if they were achieving the criteria or not. We thought, especially in the early days of our program, that clarity was going to be key from a communication standpoint because we didn't want people confused on if they were in or out of the program on meeting that criteria. So we did a bit of a market scan, and then it kind of the choice became obvious on where to start. So this was our first program, launched in about May of 2022. And it was really a partnership working with the Canadian Roundtable for Sustainable Beef. And it checked off so many of the boxes for a number of reasons. So one, the Canadian Roundtable for Sustainable Beef has what's called like a sustainability certification. And there's criteria for a producer to achieve in order to get that certification. So good, criteria exist, industry-led, perfect. Another piece we loved is they actually have on-farm audits, kind of on a cyclical nature, to verify that the criteria is being achieved by the producer. So that verification also a critical part of the process. And then the thing I maybe love the most about this initiative is the producer, kind of on that clarity if the producer is achieving the criteria or not, is they literally have a certificate on like a CRSB certification on sustainability if they're achieving the criteria. So it doesn't get any more clear from a producer perspective on if you're achieving it or not when you literally have a piece of paper in your hand saying you're doing the thing. So it checked the box in a number of ways. something I don't talk about enough. So again, we're in May 2022 here. Is although things were trending in the right direction and we hadn't quite launched yet, is really there was a sense of anxiety going into this stage of the process. Although FCC had some offers in market that kind of touch sustainability, this would have been really like our first kind of more serious play in the space, if I can say it that way. And again, sustainability being a charged subject, you know, is the offer any good? All those questions. And I just wanted to acknowledge that, hey, if you're in an industry and you're trying to put something new out to your customers and you have that little bit of anxiety within you as you're going out, um it's actually appropriate. And it's maybe something we don't own enough, is that if you don't maybe have that feeling going in, are you actually like kind of going from it from a marketing perspective and what you're trying to put out there. A critical piece in this, and I'll get at it a little bit in the lessons learned, is also how you want to, obviously the team is going to feel that as well, but it's really up to kind of like the leader of the initiative to kind of take the weight of that, because you want your team to be kind of operating in a safer environment and working within that, knowing that you're kind of making the decisions along the way to kind of take that burden on. So anyway, we're in May 2022 and Curtis isn't sleeping so well and trying to figure out how this is going to go. So offer goes out in market. What's the reception like? And it was a pretty cool experience, and it was I would say a resounding successful market launch in this initiative. And where the positive reception came from was really from a number of reasons, really. So one is FCC was we weren't creating our own thing. We were taking something the industry was trying to do and we were supporting it. So that industry led was a critical aspect of that success in market. Another really critical factor in this was that recognition piece of recognizing those producers who already had their certification and not just chasing those kind of new certifications, although that would be the root reason for the program. So the pairing of those two things, I think, made it land very reasonable on a topic such as sustainability, which was really great. And as great as the program was for supporting the beef industry in this, a couple other things happened that maybe I hadn't anticipated. Is by sending this market signal on how FCC could kind of play in this space with other partners in industry, was really the catalyst role that started to play on the phone started to ring because other individuals under other organizations were interested in joining kind of what FCC was up to. So as great as it was to have an offer specific to the beef industry, CRSB, um, the additional benefit that actually might be more powerful long term is that catalyst role in creating new programs with other entities. And the neat part about this, it wasn't just kind of the industry that took a bit of note on saying like, hey, this is a really reasonable way to approach sustainability with producers and food operators. Is some environmental groups as well. We're like, hey, there's something to this. This is a really unique perspective and approach in order to take something to market and really working with industry on what's possible. So once we kind of get that feedback on really kind of both sides, we knew we might have something a little bit more special, which was really cool. So that was May 2022. We have our first program out in market. And as I mentioned before, the phone started to ring. So over the next kind of 5 minutes here, I'm just going to really quickly go through our other 5 programs. Um, they may or may not be, relatable to what you're up to in whatever it is you're trying to accomplish. But I do like the little examples that kind of play out in each, just on how partnership with other organizations can work and how blueprints can kind of be created and worked on in the future. So we're out in market with CRSB, and then McCain essentially reaches out to FC saying like, hey, we see what you guys put out there. We're interested in working with you. Um, So McCain, back to that clarity standpoint from a communications aspect, is they have a really clear goal essentially where they want by 2030, 100% of their acres to be using the regenerative agricultural framework. So I loved that clear goal from a communication standpoint on what they're up to. What I liked even more with McCain is they had a very clear roadmap for producers on what regenerative agriculture means to them, because it can be regenerative agriculture is one of those terms that can kind of get thrown around in different ways. But what McCain has is like, hey, by 2030, we want everybody to be at least on this onboarding level. Here's how you achieve that. And also, here's how you progress through the framework to kind of, increase your sustainable activity. So we love that from a communication standpoint because it wasn't just fluff for for the producers and growers and that kind of thing. It had real operational aspects to it that people could really grab onto. The other real fun part with working with McCain is they introduced kind of the concept of layering or matching with how two companies can work together to increase the positive financial impact for the producer. So essentially, how this program works is if the grower is McCain supplier, FCC customer, that holds true every time. McCain actually has a bit of a matching program with FCC. So FCC's incentive is always the same. It's up to $2,000 once a year on each program. But we're pretty indifferent and not super picky on how others layer on top of us because more money to the producer is always a good news story in my eyes. So if the producer's on that onboarding level, which is kind of that in the middle of the screen there, the one column, no rows, McCain actually matches FCC 1-to-1. So up to $2,000 from FCC, up to $2,000 from McCain. If the grower actually progresses through the framework and they're on that beginner level, McCain matches FCC 2-to-1. So that's the 90 days red on top there. So again, that would be up to $2,000 from FCC, then up to $4,000 from McCain. And if the producer reaches that expert or master level, kind of the ones on the right side of the screen, McCain actually, there's a lot of words in this last one because we wanted to try and create interest-free financing for up to 400K with an interest rate of 4%. It wasn't 2024 when we did this, but essentially what that means is McCain matches FCC 7-to-1, so up to $2,000 from FCC and up to $14,000 from McCain. So really a really powerful financial incentive, annual still, for a producer to progress with sustainability. So this would have probably been October, November 2022. And then the last one in 2022 was a bit of a partnership with Cargill. And this was it would be for sure our most I'll call it like pilot-like program. And the reason for that is it's not available to all of Cargill's growers. It's kind of a smaller subset because they're just figuring out how to scale this over time. But we thought it was still a really good opportunity to partner with another entity on providing financial incentives to producers for increasing the sustainability on their operation. So this program again had a little bit of that layering concept, although a little bit different. Is if the producer kind of grew the crop following 4R, and it was a really robust version of 4R. Cargill would pay them, assuming the producer's selling that product to Cargill. Cargill would pay them $10 an acre to implement those practices, and the FCC incentive remained the same. So that was 2022. So that was our first year in market with programs, and we were pretty happy with the uptake. Given again that we didn't really have a serious offer in market at this standpoint. I think in our first year, we had roughly 260 producers successfully applying applications, that were eligible to apply and that were successful. And I believe FCC sent over just over $370,000 in incentive directly to producers, and that does not include the additional incentives from McCain or Cargill. That's just the FCC side. And where it's really cool, if I go back to that calculation on how the incentives work, as it's kind of based on the amount of lending a customer has with FCC, is over $70 million of lending kind of receive that positive financial impact, that 0.5% kind of retroactive rebate on the interest they were paying. So really positive from a first year in market. Once we got into 2023, we worked with the Dairy Farmers of Canada and Lactanet. This one would probably be our most complex program that I won't get into the details of it for this call. But essentially, again, clear strategy, clear, or I should say clear goal from DFC, where they want, they want to be net zero for dairy products in Canada by 2050. So we worked with DFC and also Lactanet on what's called a herd sustainability index. And then also we had to create additional criteria for those not using Lactanet services. But we had a couple different pathways for producers to achieve that criteria. And again, the messaging and approach always held true. Up to $2,000 from FCC if you're an FCC customer with lending. If you're achieving that kind of industry-led criteria, which held true with this program. So that would have been September 2023-ish. And then we launched our program with Ducks Unlimited just here in November 2023 as well. Similar aspects as our other programs, except for this one's focused more on kind of land management. This program is pretty cool for a number of reasons, but really it's because it both increases profitability for the producer while increasing benefits of biodiversity. So with this producer, and I'm going to talk Saskatchewan now because it's the simplest example. We love our quarters, we love our rectangles and straight lines. So I have a quarter of land, 160 acres. So what Ducks Unlimited will do is they'll work with the producer to figure out, hey, on this 160 acres, is there anywhere that's unproductive or non-profitable land in your operation? So they work with the producer, and then maybe the situation is like, hey, these 155 acres, they're great. Keep doing your thing there. Hey, these 5 acres over here, you're actually losing money by putting that into production. You're not getting whatever you're putting in, you're not getting back out from an input standpoint from a profitability perspective. So then Ducks Unlimited will work with that producer to seed that unproductive area into perennial cover. So it's good for the producer because it increases their net profitability. And then essentially with FCC, if the producer is part of that marginal areas program, they're eligible to participate in the FCC sustainability incentive program. We had to put one little nuance on this one, and that's just to kind of right size the incentive to the acres. It wouldn't make sense if a customer had 1 acre in marginal areas program and they received a $2,000 incentive from FCC. That'd be a bit aggressive. So we kind of had to right side it where it's up to $50 an acre until you hit that $2,000 max. And then fast forward here to just actually in January 2024, we launched our 6th program. I wanted to unpack this one because it had a bit of a different flavor from a communication standpoint and how we had to kind of line up our ducks a little bit early just to make it all make sense. So with this program, we wanted producers to be able to participate in calendar year 2024. But for producers to participate, it was really critical that we told producers prior to the growing season, even though they wouldn't be eligible to apply until after the growing season. So this one, we kind of had a flurry of activity in kind of that October, November, December range of 2023 to ensure we had a proper communication strategy in early 2024 in order to get it to market so it made sense from the producer perspective. So with this program, a little bit different. It's FCC where we worked with Fertilizer Canada and Ag Expert, which is FCC's own software. And it's really to encourage adoption of 4R in grains and oilseeds. So 4R, right place, right source, right time, right rate. So how this program works is essentially prior to the growing season, a producer has to work with a 4R designated agronomist to generate a 4R implementation plan. So that's something the 4R designated agronomist will do. So the producer has a 4R plan. Next, the producer needs to have Ag Expert Field Premium, and they'll be entering their data throughout the growing season, mostly specific to inputs like nitrogen and phosphorus, on kind of what they're up to on their farm. Then after the growing season, the magic of Ag Expert really kicks in, and it provides kind of like a summary report on that data that was entered throughout the growing season. The customer can then share that report with the 4R designated agronomist, and then the 4R designated agronomist can look at the 4R plan prior to the growing season, look at the summary report from Ag Expert and kind of say, based on what I see here, did this producer implement 4R on their farm for the majority of their acres? The agronomist might need to work with the producer just to verify a couple of things. But essentially, if the agronomist is comfortable at that point, they can then certify that information saying, yes, this customer implemented 4R. From that point, the customer simply clicks a button. It sends a an application into FCC, and we do our work on the Sustainability Incentive Programs team, as we always would. FCC customer lending, achieving the criteria of the program. So that's all of our programs. A little bit too, and I'll get into some other outcomes, but maybe more specific outcomes on uptake of our programs. So for our programs in market both years, where we could see year-over-year results, so that's specific to CRSB, McCain, and Cargill, we had a goal that we wanted to see an increase of participation of 15% or more year over year, right? So when, essentially that first year we had 260 for those three programs, we were hoping to see, roughly 300. That would get us to that 15%. We're still kind of finalizing our numbers, but for those programs, it looks like uptake is actually a little north of 25% increase in year-over-year participation. So really positive uptake from the industry on successful applicants into the programs. If you then add in the new programs in 2023, so the ones with Dairy Farmers of Canada and Ducks Unlimited, we had roughly 500, just over 500 producers successfully apply into our program. So I think, over $800,000 of incentives sent out in calendar year 2024. So real positive reception from the industry, backed by real participation in the programs. So that's our programs out there in market. Next here, I just have a couple of slides to kind of go over some of the learnings on initiative development. Of course, these are specific to our sustainability incentive programs, but really these lessons learned can be used in, I would say, going to market with any initiative out there. So this first slide, it's it's a little cheesy. I'll be the first one to recognize it, but or maybe cheesy is not the right word. Maybe cliche. We'll go cliche. But the reason it's cliche is because there's some truth to it. And I just wanted to unpack this a little bit. I'm going to go in a really random order. I should have updated the bullets, but that's okay. It's to make sure you're paying attention. I'll maybe start with this fourth bullet here on the clarity and fun of a team and how that works in team dynamics. So to kind of throw a question out there to the group, have you ever launched anything successfully with a group of people where everyone is generally having a pretty bad time? The answer is obviously no. If people are having a bad time, they're not engaged, probably not putting their best foot forward, and what you're trying to put out there in market will either maybe not happen or be a lot slower than you'd like. So ensuring you have some sort of like fun team dynamic is actually really important in initiative development, because it's often exciting. It's often, there's a bit of fear in there, and you need to be able to laugh at the failures and that kind of thing in order to move forward with any velocity. And then a critical part in the having fun is from a leadership standpoint, or initiative leader, or if you're the one in charge of putting the thing out to market, is the clarity you provide for that team. You need to provide clear kind of guardrails on what they're up to. Again, have that fun environment, but then kind of get out of their way, because if people are having fun and they're clear on what they're up to, they'll make the magic. You at that point, you just got to get out of their way. And maybe this leads into that second bullet here. I told you I was going to go in a random order. Is that's where like decision making kind of comes in, and how that fun and clarity can really live. So ideally, you want as many decisions as possible to happen at the ground level. If those decisions aren't happening at the ground level, either you don't have the right team, right? So that's a problem. Or you're, as the person leading the initiative, kind of getting in your own way. So if you trust the team and they're doing good work, you've provided that fun atmosphere, they're clear on the objectives, let them make as many of the decisions that they can. And then something natural will start to occur, and it occurs in our everyday life, is if something kind of feels, quote unquote, like too big for the team to decide on, they'll elevate those. They're not crazy people. They're gonna kind of objectively sense like, this one maybe is a bit out of my range here. I'm gonna ask my boss, and then that person will make some decisions. The ones they're not comfortable with, so on and so forth. But kind of like leaving that to the ground level and letting it naturally occur I do think really aids in the velocity and really enablement of a team on any initiative going out to market. On this third bullet here on the gifts and gaps. So if we would have had a bunch of just communicators, heavy data people only, just sales, we wouldn't have been able to go to market with any of this. We truly needed a diverse set of skill sets, diverse skill sets on the team to have a chance of pulling this off. So, just looking at that when you're bringing something to market and kind of analyzing like what are the types of folks I need to pull this off. Often you need a few different skills, and it's a bit unreasonable to expect that one person has all those skills. So you want a little bit of diversity in how that's working. And again, if you're having that fun and clear atmosphere, people will naturally kind of select on, hey, what's most in their wheelhouse. I won't maybe talk too much about this first bullet because I covered it earlier, but it's just that acknowledgement and that reality of when you're trying something new, you're going to market. There will be some anxiety, and you need to kind of just talk about it and have fun with it, and recognize if things don't go well, it's everybody's going to be okay. Nobody's going to die. We're not a doctor in healthcare here with going to market. It's funny when we were putting this slide together. It's written progress over perfection, and it's honestly probably not written strongly enough. I would actually say perfection is the enemy of progress, and there's just no other two ways about it, and it shows up so many different ways, unintended ways, if you're going for perfection over progress. And some of these bullets on this slide kind of highlight that. So I'll maybe start with the first one here. Anytime you're doing something, newish, there's essentially two ways to spend money. You can spend money doing things, or you can spend money talking about things. I think the trick we play with ourselves is we think spending money talking about things will actually be cheaper than spending money doing things. And from my experience, that's actually often not the case. I don't know if anybody's had to pay consultants lately. And if you spin in that world too long, you'll actually burn up all your cash before you get going to market. And where this is related to progress over perfection is if I'm super worried that the thing I'm up to is perfect, I am going to spend a ton of money talking about things because I want it to be perfect. Where if you have that little bit more of a progress mindset, you're going to want to do things, right? And then I think that'll help you get whatever it is you're trying to do into market. And what's super ironic about this is it kind of feeds back, it goes into this fourth bullet here about real market feedback, is I'm a lot more curious about what people do versus what they say. And that real market feedback of actually putting the thing out there that your customers can interact with or touch or whatever the case is for you, it's so much more valuable because it's what they're actually doing. And you can see how this leads into progress over perfection, right? As if you're focused on progress, trying things out in market, you'll get real market feedback to make your thing better. So you'll actually end up with something better instead of burning all your money on the talking stage. And to go to this third bullet here on starting simple, again, all comes back to progress over perfection. I don't know if you know this, but we as humans, we love to over engineer things where we can. Like I'm talking just engineering things to death, over processing, and just, perfection till we die. And it really fits in there, right? Because if you're trying to make something perfect, you're not going to be comfortable starting with something simple. You're going to try and make the most robust, complex thing in the world, even though you haven't got any market feedback to tell you if that's the right version of whatever the thing you're trying to do. So the start simple, I'll put it like this. Whatever it is on the idea you have, what is the most simple version of that idea that your customers can interact with? Put that idea out there. And it's not saying your idea won't become more complex over time, because it could, but it'll become more complex for the right reasons because you'll put that simple idea out there, spending money doing things. You'll get real market feedback, which will help you iteratively improve whatever it is you've put out there. And it'll naturally become more complex, but for the right reasons from the real customer feedback, not from spinning on talking about things in that perfection land that can be not great. So those are just were some of the lessons we learned as we went throughout this, because when I was presenting the different initiatives in market, is it might have the appearance that, oh, we had it all together and we knew all the things before we went in. Not even close. There was so many learnings along the way that just made things better. And then the outcomes of this, really, I talked about the market uptake, so I won't go into that anymore. Was really kind of it's this first bullet here. It's that flywheel effect and how fast that can move once you actually do get in market. So the thing I didn't anticipate was kind of how one thing leads to another. That's kind of the definition of a flywheel effect, right? So getting something out there and then watching it go. So with the initiative development that we didn't anticipate is once something got out there, then the next person called. Because the favorite question I get about our programs is, well, how did you guys, how did you land McCain? How did that happen? Did you pitch him good? Or what about that one with DFC? Why did you get that? And the answer is very simple. The reason why we were able to develop an initiative with McCain was because we did the one with the Canadian Roundtable for Sustainable Beef. The reason why we were able to do one with Cargill is because we did McCain and CRSB. The reason why we got DFC is because we did the first three. And it's just that flywheel once you actually get out and market that can really go. And the neat thing that happens is because you've spent money doing things and you're a lot smarter than you're a lot smarter now than you were in the past, is your team gets so much better at executing each new initiative because you've learned so much along the way. So it's just I can't understate how important that is. And once we started to kind of hum along in this respect, is the industry took note and it just kind of took off from there. So that's I think that's my entire presentation. I think I just have a question slide here, but I'll maybe stop sharing. Tracy, I think it's you who's maybe going to ask me a few things, and I think we have some time, and we'll dive right in.
Yeah, you bet. I've got a few questions here in the chat. Okay. I'm going to start with an easy one
Ooh.
for you. How much marketing of the programs does FCC take on versus our partners in the program?
Mm. Um, Boy, Tracy might actually be the better one to answer this than me. I would say FCC probably does well. I think it's probably pretty close. The one thing maybe I'll stress is because the ideas were simple enough and it was actually to get real money to producers for doing real things. We actually didn't spend a lot of money on marketing because the concepts kind of ran on their own. I mean, it's not that FCC doesn't like promote it on, your social media channels or anything like that. And then what's kind of fun is actually I don't know if I should say this on a call or not. Sometimes our partners would do stuff without us knowing, but in like the most positive way possible. I have a funny story on this one where, you're at home, you're cruising your phone, doing whatever, and I'm reading the Globe and Mail, and I'm clicking around, and there's an article in by McCain in there. I'm like, oh, what's this? And I clicked in it and read it. And obviously it's mostly about McCain and like what they're up to with regenerative agriculture and their goals around that. And then there's just like this really neat kind of paragraph in there, and it kind of talks about our program with them, and it's just there was something so natural about how that occurred. And we kind of see that over and over again. So we do for sure provide some materials with our partners on, hey, here's how, to kind of talk about this or, imaging, that sort of stuff. But we, for the most part, kind of let them run a little bit on what they're up to and let nature take its course.
Perfect. Another question here for you, Curtis. You spoke about the benefits of some of your partners' programs that they brought to FCC. What would be your top needs or top things you have learned that are important for FCC to collaborate with partners moving forward?
What a question. I'll do a fun one that might make Tracy laugh a little bit. Is I think something we don't acknowledge. It's the concept of so from a maybe I'll start on somewhere else. From a program standpoint, FCC does have a few requirements, right? Like there needs to be a clear criteria, there needs to be verification. There, hopefully has been some producer uptake, kind of proving it out that it's not, it's not unachievable or that kind of thing. So that's kind of like our nuts and bolts of our program side of it. More like general, not program specific, but maybe just working with partners is in our personal life, we fully acknowledge that everybody's family is weird, right? Everybody has a weirdness to their family, right? That's life. And I think we all need to acknowledge that that is exactly true from a company perspective, and you have to be willing to grant grace there. And that's mutually, that's both, that's all parties involved. It's never a one-way thing, because there's certain ways that I think FCC can be weird about stuff, and then there's certain times a partner, does something or said something, you're like, that's kind of weird. But you know what? If you kind of take the mindset going in that, like, we're all a little bit weird. We've all have had experiences in the past, which means how we do things is a little bit different. Is like it's never a personal thing. It's just the reality of the situation, and then just work within that reality to make the magic happen.
Yes, that's so true. One more question here. Did FCC have any concerns partnering with for-profit agribusinesses and other organizations?
Yes. The answer is yes, but I'll maybe push back on this one. Like, I think there will be fear. That I'm calling it fear. That's maybe a bit extreme. There's anxiety, and kind of no matter what you're up to in this space. And the question you have to ask yourself is like, are you doing it for the right reason? And is there like is there something meaningful behind it that you're trying to get out to market? And no, for sure, when CRSB certainly isn't McCain Foods. Those are two totally different companies, or entities, I should say, one being for profit. Um, and the answer kind of became really clear when we were, I'll say, struggling with that. Is Well, like, is what we're up to, is this the right thing to do for Canadian agriculture? Take profit, non-profit, all that out of it. Is this the right thing to do for Canadian agriculture? Having a program like this with someone who's super clear on what they're trying to do, providing real financial incentives for producers to adopt those things. Well, if that's not right for Canadian agriculture, I don't want to be right. I want to be wrong. So it's for sure a real thing, and yeah, it's you just have to sometimes take a little bit of a leap of faith.
Yeah, all the risk management strategies in the world, sometimes, while they're good to have, when real life comes into play, that's when you take your most learnings out of things, right?
Absolutely.
Another question here. Have you had any negative pushback from any farmer or clients?
Yeah, no, for sure. Like, you're never going to put something out there that is 100% agreed to by all. And I think what's really important there is when those things do occur is that you just kind of have your ducks in a row from a messaging standpoint, right? And kind of, have your how you'll talk about this in market, because people for sure can disagree with what you're up to, but there's kind of a bit of a, I think that there needs to be a bit of company resiliency there, because that acknowledgement that, hey, if you're going to do something, especially in, I mean, I don't think I'm mincing words, like, it is a strange world right now to do anything, um, and you just have to be comfortable that that's going to be the case. But we were always pretty clear that, like, hey, all of our stuff is entirely voluntary. We're working with the industry on this. We're providing incentives to people, and just kind of having those ready to go when you need to. And again, nobody's ever going to like it. And honestly, the view is always going to be probably you're not doing enough. But you have to start somewhere, and that's where that progress over perfection for sure comes in.
Well, I'm not sure if everybody knows, but I have the pleasure of working with Curtis on the team. And I'm not going to ask him who his favorite team member is, because we all know who that is. But from a true marketing standpoint, what's been your favorite program to work on?
Ooh, do you know what? I'm gonna give a political answer that nobody will like, but maybe I think it's a good answer, but I can't pick between my children. It'd be unfair. Um, what I'll say is, like, there's certain aspects of certain programs that are my favorite. So like CRSB, for example, I think it is probably like the most clear program from a producer perspective on if they're in or out. There's no confusion on, oh, I thought I was, it's you got the certificate, right? Like, So from a clarity standpoint, I absolutely love that. What I love about the McCain is that, and hopefully this will be a catalyst into the future for other organizations to, in working with FCC, is like, hey, we can make this bigger and better by working together for the producer. So I absolutely love that partnership with in working with McCain there. On like something like DFC, that's been super cool. Is it's for sure probably our most complex program, but it kind of had to be, and it's almost like it's going to help producers manage their data better and therefore make better decisions on their farm in addition to sustainability. So that's something really cool about that program. So they all kind of have their own like little pieces that I really love. And the part I really enjoy now is you kind of, because you've had reps, you've had repetitions in different types of programs, you're just a little bit smarter on like, ooh, when we do this, we really got to think about this thing over here because this works really well for this other program and that kind of thing.
Thanks. Well, that wraps up our presentation today. I'm going to send it on back over to Tristan. I'd like to thank Curtis for sharing his insights with our CAMA membership today. And Tristan, take it away.
Thanks, Tracy. And thank you again to Curtis for sharing your time, sharing your expertise, sharing your knowledge with us all. I'm sure that everyone really enjoyed the presentation. I definitely know that I did. In lieu of a speaker gift, CAMA will be donating to CABIF in your name. CABIF, for those who don't know, is a charity that provides scholarships to Canadian students who are pursuing an agricultural and post-secondary education. Thank you so much again to everybody for participating today. And I want to give a special shout out to our webinar series sponsors once again, those two being CABIF and Top Crop Manager. If any of you would like to learn more about CAMA, please visit our website at cama.org. Thank you again for attending today, and thank you for your ongoing support. Have a great rest of your day, everybody.